Rain pelted the quiet streets of Willow Creek, a small college town in Texas, turning the sidewalks into slick mirrors of the gray sky above. Mark Davis, a 23-year-old law student, trudged along, his worn backpack slung over one shoulder. His face, etched with worry, reflected the weight of his final year at law school, a part-time job at a diner, and the crushing debts left by his late father, Thomas Davis. The world seemed to tighten its grip on him daily, each bill a reminder of his father's reckless business ventures that had left his family teetering on the edge of ruin. Mark's phone buzzed, snapping him from his thoughts. "Mark Davis speaking," he answered, his voice weary but steady. "Mr. Davis, this is Eleanor Brooks," came a composed, authoritative voice. "I'd like to meet with you regarding your financial situation." Mark frowned, his steps slowing. "I'm sorry, who are you? How do you know about?" "I know enough," she interrupted smoothly. "Meet me at Brooks Bistro, 7 p.m. It's important." The call ended abruptly, leaving Mark staring at his phone, confusion swirling in his mind. Despite his reservations, curiosity drove him to the upscale cafe. The rain fell harder as he arrived, his thin jacket soaked through. Inside, warm lighting and the rich aroma of coffee enveloped him. At a corner table sat Eleanor Brooks, a striking woman in her early 70s with silver hair styled impeccably and a tailored suit that exuded wealth. Her piercing blue eyes met his as she gestured for him to sit. "Mrs. Brooks, what's this about?" Mark asked, his tone cautious as he took the seat opposite her. "Straight to the point." "Good," she said, sipping her tea with deliberate calm. "Mark, I know about your debts, your father's debts. I know you're barely scraping by. I'm here to offer a solution." Mark's brows furrowed. "And what would that be?" She set down her cup, her gaze unwavering. "Marry me." The words hung in the air, heavy and surreal. Mark blinked, certain he'd misheard. "Excuse me." "You heard me," Eleanor said, her voice steady. "This isn't about romance. It's a business arrangement. I'll pay off your debts, ensure your financial security, and in return, you'll be my husband." Mark let out a disbelieving laugh. "You're serious? Why me? You don't even know me." Eleanor leaned forward slightly. "Exactly. You're young, unattached, and desperate enough to consider this. I don't need love, Mark. I need a companion, someone to share my name, my estate, for appearances. Think of it as a contract." Mark shook his head, his mind racing. "This is insane. What's in it for you?" Her expression softened, just for a moment. "I've spent my life alone, Mark. No children, no family. I want companionship, even if it's formal. And I want control of my legacy. A husband helps solidify that." He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "I can't. I need time to think." "Of course," she replied coolly. "But don't take too long. The offer doesn't stand forever." That night, Mark sat at the kitchen table with his mother, Susan, her frail frame hunched over a cup of tea. The cost of her cancer treatments had drained their savings, and his younger sister Emily's college tuition loomed like a storm cloud. After Mark explained Eleanor's proposition, Susan's pale face tightened with worry. "I know it sounds unthinkable," she said softly, her voice trembling, "but if she's willing to help, maybe it's worth considering." Mark stared at his hands, torn between pride and desperation. "You're asking me to marry a woman I don't love just to solve our problems." "I'm asking you to save yourself," she said, tears welling. "To save us." The next morning, Mark returned to the bistro. Eleanor sat at the same table, her demeanor as composed as ever. "You've decided," she said, not looking up from her tablet. Mark took a deep breath. "I'll do it." She smiled faintly. "Good. The arrangements will be made immediately." 7 days later, Mark stood in a small courthouse, dressed in a suit Eleanor had provided. The ceremony was brief, witnessed only by her lawyer and a notary. As they exchanged vows, Mark's chest tightened with unease. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Eleanor turned to him with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Welcome to your new life, Mr. Davis." As they left the courthouse, rain drizzling once more, Mark caught his reflection in a puddle and wondered, have I saved my family, or sold my soul? The gates to Eleanor's estate creaked open as Mark's cab rolled up the long driveway. The sprawling mansion loomed ahead, its towering columns and stone facade exuding old money. Yet its dark windows felt lifeless, like eyes watching without warmth. Mark stepped out, suitcase in hand, feeling like an intruder in someone else's world. Eleanor greeted him in the foyer, her polished demeanor unshaken. "Welcome, Mr. Davis," she said, the formal address sending a shiver down his spine. "Dinner is at 7 o'clock. I trust you'll find everything to your satisfaction." A housekeeper led him to his room, an opulent space with a king-sized bed, antique furnishings, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured gardens. Despite its luxury, the room felt cold, as if untouched by human warmth. At dinner, Mark sat stiffly at the long dining table, Eleanor at the other end, dressed in a silk blouse and pearls. The meal, prepared by an unseen chef, was extravagant, served by silent staff. "I trust you're settling in," Eleanor said, cutting her filet mignon with precision. "It's different," Mark replied cautiously. "This place is huge. Feels like I'll get lost." Eleanor smirked. "You'll get used to it. Or you won't. Either way, you're here." Mark bristled at her bluntness. "You didn't mention much about your late husband before." Her knife paused mid-cut. She dabbed her mouth with a napkin. "Harold was a businessman, like your father. Their paths crossed once or twice." Her tone darkened. "Not all encounters end well." Mark's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" Her eyes sharpened. "Unfinished business has a way of lingering." She picked up her wine glass. "You'll understand soon enough why I chose you." Her cryptic words left Mark uneasy. After dinner, he wandered the estate's halls, the silence broken only by the creak of floorboards. Locked doors lined the corridors, their brass handles gleaming in the dim light, each one whispering secrets. The staff avoided his gaze, their hushed conversations halting when he approached. He caught fragments. Why him? Does he know? She never does anything without a reason. One evening, pacing the library, Mark noticed Eleanor's desk, papers strewn across it alongside a small, ornate key. His heart pounded as he reached for it, the metal cool and heavy. Could it unlock one of the mysterious doors? Glancing around, he slipped it into his pocket. That night, in his suffocatingly luxurious room, Mark turned the key over in his hands. Questions swirled. What is Eleanor hiding? Why me? Under the cover of darkness, Mark crept down the hall, the key a lead weight in his pocket. He approached a locked door he'd noticed earlier, its handle gleaming in the moonlight. With a glance over his shoulder, he turned the key. The soft click echoed like a gunshot in the silence. The room was a time capsule. Dusty furniture, faded wallpaper, and photographs in tarnished frames. Images showed a younger Eleanor, a man, presumably Harold Brooks, and another couple Mark didn't recognize. On the desk lay a stack of papers. Mark's eyes widened as he scanned them, legal documents detailing failed business deals between Harold and Mark's father, Thomas. A letter in sharp, slanted handwriting accused Thomas of fraud. "You ruined everything. My family was left with nothing because of your lies." Mark's breath hitched when he found a marriage license, his and Eleanor's, dated weeks before their wedding, far earlier than he'd been told. Nearby was an old leather-bound diary. Eleanor's entries revealed a chilling plan. "I will take everything from him, just as his father did to me. Mark will be my pawn." The door creaked behind him. "Enjoying yourself?" Eleanor's voice cut through the shadows like a blade. Mark spun around, guilt and fear etched on his face. "Eleanor, you thought you'd find answers here." She stepped into the room, her silhouette sharp. "Curiosity killed the cat, Mark. Why did you marry me?" he demanded, his voice low but firm. "Is this about my father? Revenge?" Her eyes hardened, her composure cracking. "It's not your place to ask questions. Do what you're told, and you'll leave this marriage better off." "Isn't that enough?" Mark's fists clenched. "You've lied to me, manipulated me. This isn't a marriage, it's a trap." Eleanor's lips curled into a cold smile. "A trap? Maybe you should have thought twice before signing those papers." Her tone turned venomous. "You're just like your father, blind to the damage you cause." Mark glared at her, the weight of his father's legacy crushing him. "If you hated him so much, why take it out on me? I had nothing to do with what he did." Eleanor stared at him, the silence stretching. Finally, she turned on her heel. "You're in over your head, Mark. Stay out of matters that don't concern you." Her footsteps faded down the hall. That night, Mark lay awake, Eleanor's words haunting him. He overheard her in her study, her voice sharp. "Make sure the transfer is complete. We can't let him back out now. Time is running out." His blood ran cold. Whatever was happening, he was in deeper than he'd imagined. Mark sat in the library, his mind a whirlpool of fear. He'd hired a private investigator, who confirmed the truth. Harold Brooks had been swindled by Thomas Davis in a fraudulent real estate deal, stripping the Brooks family of their fortune. Harold's heart attack soon after left Eleanor embittered, her marriage to Mark a calculated move to exact revenge. Determined to escape, Mark confided in his law school friend, Peter. Hypothetically, Mark said over coffee, if someone signed a contract under false pretenses, could it be voided? Peter raised an eyebrow. Hypothetically, yes, with evidence. Why? You in trouble? Just a class project, Mark lied, his heart racing. Late one night, Mark found an envelope in Eleanor's office addressed to his father. The letter inside accused Thomas of embezzlement and fraud, blaming him for Harold's death. You left us with nothing. I'll see to it your family pays. Eleanor's revenge wasn't just financial, it was personal. Mark resolved to act. He couldn't let Eleanor use him as a pawn. But her instincts were sharp. At breakfast, she fixed him with a cold smile. You've been busy, haven't you? Mark froze, his spoon halfway to his mouth. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play coy, she said, leaning closer. If you betray me, you'll wish you hadn't. With Peter's help, Mark compiled evidence, documents from Eleanor's office and the investigator's findings, revealing her shady business dealings, falsified reports and illegal partnerships to rebuild her empire. Peter warned, this is enough to take her down, but be careful. If she suspects you, there's no telling what she'll do. The next morning, Mark confronted Eleanor in the sitting room, evidence in hand. I know everything, about my father, Harold, your schemes. Her calm faltered, her eyes flicking to the papers. You've been snooping again. I understand you were wronged, Mark said, his voice rising, but what about the people you've hurt? What about me? I didn't deserve this. Eleanor's jaw tightened. The family lost everything. My husband died of heartbreak. Don't talk to me about fairness. Revenge won't bring him back, Mark said, his hands shaking. When does it end? For a moment, regret flickered in Eleanor's eyes. You remind me of Harold, that fire, that stubbornness. I didn't expect to feel anything for you, Mark. Then stop this, he urged. Let it go. Before she could respond, police officers entered, followed by Peter. Eleanor Brooks, you're under arrest for fraud and conspiracy. Her face hardened as she looked at Mark. You called them. You left me no choice, he said. As they led her away, Eleanor turned back. You may think you've won, Mark, but revenge isn't easily undone. Be careful it doesn't consume you too. At Eleanor's trial, Mark's testimony helped reduce her sentence, not out of sympathy but understanding. Days later, he received the estate's deed and a letter from Eleanor. It was never about the money, Mark. It was about closure. You've shown me the capacity to move forward. Use this estate well. Mark sold the estate, paying off his family's debts and establishing the Harold Brooks Scholarship Fund for second chances. Returning to law school, he interned at a legal aid center, helping those wronged like Eleanor. A year later, a letter from Eleanor arrived. Revenge is its own prison. Your kindness taught me forgiveness is strength. Thank you for breaking the cycle. At the scholarship ceremony, Mark spoke. This fund is about turning pain into purpose. As he walked away, Eleanor's letter in his pocket, the clear sky above felt like a promise. The weight of the past had lifted, replaced by hope and redemption.